Today we're going to be talking about independent games, the Bit Wars. We're going to be talking about Disney and Capcom, and we have a special musical guest, Zach Hunt.
So sit back and relax and get ready for some power talk. Thank you all and welcome to Power Talk. I'm Andy Madness.
I'm Nostalgia Kid 84.
And we're right here to discuss what I think is a crucial set to the market of gaming, independent games. And that's what I wanted our first topic to be about.
Right.
I really just wanted to go ahead and kick it off with talking about what is the future of gaming, really, in the sense to me.
Well, first off, why is independent games the future for you in the gaming world?
For me, it's more like, these guys were gamers at one point that made these games. I'm not saying big companies aren't gamers, but what I'm trying to get at is independent games are people who are using the software on their computers that they have, and they make these games with their own ideas, but they borrow concepts from other games, and they seem to always pay homage to older games. To the classics. Right. I guess that's what I'm really trying to get at. It pays homage to the classics, and I think independent games really nail that. I think they just nail that very well.
Right.
And we got several games we're going to talk about. You got one, so what has to start off with?
That's a pretty good a segue here when he's talking about paying homage for independent games. Myself, I found that Gunman Clive, it is a fantastic Mega Man clone it's available on the Nintendo eShop. It's $1.99. It's produced by the, let me get this, Hoiberg? No, not Hoiberg, but I think it's a German company.
Those companies, man.
Yeah,
those companies,
I'm pretty sure it's Hoiberg production company. Let me just tell you right now. Everything about this game screams art. From the gameplay to the hand-drawn actual animation, it's just fantastic. The music is wonderful. It's this old, set in the Old West in the 1800s, 18XX. Mayor Johnson's daughter gets kidnapped by these thugs and goons, or whatever you want to call them, and you are a Gunman Clive. You're Gunman Clive, and you're going off to find Mayor Johnson's daughter, and through each level, gradually increases in hardness, and so does the bosses. The bosses gradually increase in size, and as well as hardness. But it's a beautiful independent game. It pays homage to a couple of games, Mario 2 and especially Mega Man, but there's some really good games, in the independent market. That's one of my favorites. Oh
yeah, I took a look at it, and just the way it looks, just like when you sit down and you watch gameplay of it, you're just like, wow, it's literally like somebody who just really loves this art style and was like, but I also love video games. How can I blend them together? It's kind of like Wind Waker. It was a beautiful art style. Miyamoto being how he is, he's like, I really want to put Zelda with this art style, and that's how I felt when I looked at it. That's how I saw it. The game I want to talk about is Shovel Knight. It's actually not out yet. It's in development with Yacht Club Games. It's kind of like DuckTales. It's pretty much your knight with a shovel. Go figure. And
I actually know nothing about this game. So.
Yeah. It's got he can do like Scrooge McDuck does. He can kind of bounce on his shovel, kind of like how he does with his cane. And basically it's kind of the classic premise of someone's been kidnapped, and you got to go through these 8 bosses, and then you got to go through their head boss, the main mastermind, similar to Mega Man with Robot Masters. The most unique part, and this is why I go back to just the power of independent games these days. In the 80s, if you produced an independent game, it's usually garbage. It's usually trash. I can't think of one that was literally an independent game that took off. Bible games, whatever happened to them? Nothing. But this game got so popular, they did a Kickstarter project, started at $75,000 was all they wanted. They ended up with like over $300,000, and it looks phenomenal. I mean, it's just got this.
You know, going back to Gum and Clyde for just a second, at $1.99, that game is a steal. Like, I was shocked after I played it for $1.99. That's another point to bring up about independent games.
The cheap, but they give you can just tell. I mean, yeah, they want their money. You almost don't ever want to pirate an independent game because you're like, wow, it's already so cheap. Why do it? So
give them their money they deserve.
Yeah, give them their money they deserve.
Such hard work into a game that they're selling for $1.99.
And speaking of pirating independent games, there's a game called Game Creator Tycoon. I believe that's the name of it. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that there is, if you pirated it, they actually released a torrent. This company did. They released a torrent, and it immediately picked up. And the thing is, while you're playing the game, at one part, you start losing money because some people are stealing your game. And the game pops up, it's like, man, I wish people wouldn't steal our games. No matter what we do, they still steal our games. And if only they would support the creator. But the whole point is, you know, the games are cheap. They are the Humble Bundles, which aren't always independent games, but I've seen some independent games on Humble Bundles that are just, wow. Right. Like, I'm only going to pay this for this. It's like, why not help the company? And you know, with Shovel Knight, I'm so glad they got that Kickstarter the way they did, because I saw it at E3. That's the only time I got a glimpse of it, and I was just taken. I was like, I got to have this game. I've got to play it. And you know, but Shovel Knight is just one of few of my favorites.
Right. There's, you know, we're not trying to say that this is the only two independent. There's a lot of, I'm sure people were, you know, hey, I love Limbo, or I love Super Meat Boy, or I love Cube World, or you know, there's several independent games that are really good. But this is just, you know, a couple of our favorites that really
more like personal faves.
Right.
Which is what I'm moving on to next is Humaniki. Humaniki, I'm telling you, because I think for Earthbound fans, it's where you go next. But it's only if you like that dark side of Earthbound. Now, if you didn't like the dark side of Earthbound, like the humor side, stay away from this game, because it is not that kind of game. It's not. It's terrifying, but it's not like Slender, which is also an independent game. It's not like Slender where it's a bunch of jump scares or, you know, something just pops up.
Which I personally don't really care for. But.
Yeah. This is more of an atmospheric terror game. And it's kind of like, if anybody remembers Earthbound or who has played it, at the end of the game before you go to Gigas, you're in that very dark area.
Right.
It's that times 10. But it too, you know, it was produced in Japan. It's by a homebrew Japanese developer. I think the name is Kikiyama. And, you know, you basically play as this young girl who, in the normal world, you know, you're in your house. You don't ever want to leave your apartment. It's actually an apartment. You can go out to your balcony and stuff, but you never want to leave your house. Because every time you go to the door, the character just shakes her head. There's a TV that's always on that you can play two little games on. I don't know their exact names, but they're like two. One's a Famicom-based game. And then you go out into the balcony, and that's all you can do. Well, when you lay in your bed, you wake back up in your apartment, but you're out in your balcony. I'm pretty sure you start out in your balcony, and then you walk back in your living room, and now you can leave your door. But you're in this surreal dream world. It is a work of art. It is one of my favorite independent games, and I just wished. I mean, I will say this anyway. Anybody who gets easily, I guess, afraid, I guess would be the word, of that atmospheric feeling, don't play this game, because it can do it. But
it does remind me a lot of the Earthbound, the Dark World, like you were saying. And actually, that part in Earthbound was really freaky for me as a kid. So if you're saying it's times 10.
Oh, it is. I mean, there are segments in that game. It's like Earthbound with the whole Gigas being an abortion theory.
Yeah.
It's like that. You know, there's a segment in the game where you go through a couple of rooms, and I won't spoil it pretty much, but the theory is maybe she was a rape victim.
Right.
But I won't tell you what gives that away. But I will say, for anybody out there, look this game up, Humaniki. I think it literally translates to Dream Diary. Get it. Just grab it and go. So definitely one of those games that just has to be played.
Right, I totally agree, and you've probably talked me straight into going and getting it as soon as we get home. So.
Actually, talking about going and getting it, while we got one more independent game we really need to nail is Minecraft.
Yeah, it's huge. It's everywhere right now. You can't walk into a store, a retail store, without seeing Minecraft plastered all over the wall.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This is where I get back to like independent games back in the day couldn't do crap. Today, that game rivals high quality production studios in money, in like sales. They rival some of them, and I think it just boils back to the fact that independent gamers give players what they want. You know, Notch, who's the creator of the game, genius. He was inspired by a game, I think it's called Infiniminer, which is another style of mining game.
Yeah.
And but the thing about him, growing up, I always like, man, what would a game like if I had a lot of roaming space? And of course, my imagination was fed with Ocarina of Time, because how many times, I'm sure someone watching this can go, yeah, I remember one time I just cut my 64 on, I just rode Epona throughout Hyrule, and I didn't do anything. No dungeons.
Just look at the land.
Just look at the land. Notch takes this, and now he amplifies it. I bought it back in alpha. I bought it back when it was only like $10, and you never have to pay for it again. And I kind of feel bad for people who got it later. 'Cause I'm not for sure about this because I didn't really want to delve into it that much. But I mean, I'm pretty sure people who bought it later on have to pay for certain updates. I'm not 100% positive on that, but I know I bought it during alpha when, to me, it was super important. But yeah, I think independent games are the top of the market. I think they're really coming in with places. Steam's really taking advantage of it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And with gamers making these games, paying homage to our favorite games from when we
Oh,
were
yeah,
kids,
yeah.
How could you go wrong?
How could you? But hey, we'll be right back. We're going to cut to a commercial, and we'll see you guys in a few minutes.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Now, when you buy the Sega Genesis that comes with Sonic 1, you'll get Sonic 2 absolutely free. Sonic 2 handles stubborn stains, embarrassing bald spots, no problem. It even slices and dices, makes thousands of julienne fries. But wait, you can play it too. This free Sonic 2 is a $54.99 value. You get 2 Sonics for the price of 1. Sonic 2 fits easily into any tackle box. Made from a space-age polymer plastic for years of family fun, and pets love it too. Buy the Sega Genesis that comes with Sonic 1 and get Sonic 2 free. Act now. Wiener Dog Sweater sold separately.
Hey, welcome back. We hope you enjoyed a little nostalgia in the commercials there. Now it's time to talk about the Bit Wars.
Yeah, the Bit Wars took place between late 80s, early 90s. Actually, I don't really have too much to say about this because you're a little bit older than me, and around that time, I think I was, just a little too young to be surrounded with the atmosphere.
In the diaper still.
Yeah, I was in the diapers, a slam dunk, and I forget where that joke came from. But anyways, I've done my research. I've done my research on the Bit Wars, but I could never express what it's like growing up there. So I'm going to ask you, what's it like growing up during a time when this weird set of numbers, divisible by 8, were thrown at you in commercials?
Well, it's quite comical actually, and that was right at the time. I originally started, my first system, of course, was the NES, as it was for a lot of guys who grew up in the 80s. But I was kind of young for the NES, and when the Super Nintendo came out, I was, right where I needed to be at the age where I could comprehend and play and understand and fully grasp the concept of a game. And also at the time, I had just this humongous love for books. Like I just couldn't get enough reading, right? So with the Super Nintendo, of course, came the RPG era, the RPG machine for me. So I dove right in, to all these RPGs. And of course, it was loaded with text, so I was loving it. So, a little bit biased. But the Bit Wars, yeah, absolutely. It was comical because it was just like maybe every other month or every other 2 or 3 weeks or every other week or something. Nintendo was trying to one-up Sega, if you will, one-up. Yeah. Sega was trying to one-up Nintendo. However it was just like you have, and it was mostly Sega, I want to say, given they were trying to, what's it called,
I know they did the we do what Nintendo don't.
Right. But it was more Sega, I want to say, from memory, kind of bashing Nintendo, because Nintendo was like, we're more mature than this. Everybody loves our system. We got great games. We know it. We're confident. I don't need to say, Genesis, you suck. But Sega was coming out and saying, you know, Sega does what Nintendo don't.
Yeah.
And their whole get-up, their whole, lost the word again. I'll think of it in a second. But anyways, Sega was playing on the fact that they had this little processor, this little speed.
Their gimmick, kind of.
Their gimmick.
Their gimmick. Their
Was
gimmick.
their accelerator. Oh, look how fast Sonic can go. Super Nintendo can do that.
It's actually on the Mario. It actually featured Mario Kart 2 on that too.
That's right. Yeah.
I thought that's actually like one of the Mario Kart commercials for me. I do remember that commercial. Later on, actually, I saw it aired. So I mean, yeah, they did. They really pushed this whole processing thing. You're right.
The processing speed. But you know what it really boiled down to was just quality of games. And the whole thing about Nintendo is around this time too, Nintendo had almost a monopoly on third-party game development.
Oh yeah.
They had them locked down in a contract, and they could not get out until a certain date, which I don't know what that date was. But Sega, maybe they didn't have a chance because Nintendo had everybody locked in. I mean, they had a lot of developers locked in, and they couldn't get out of these contracts whether they wanted to or not, which turned out to be quite a good thing for Super Nintendo fans. Because I'm a fan of the Super Nintendo. Personally, I feel it's the better of the two. It's the better system. A lot of people might disagree because
well, they grew up.
You grew up with either maybe you didn't have or couldn't afford both. You either had a Super Nintendo, or you had a Sega Genesis.
Don't hate me, but it's like the Team Edward, Team Jacob. Oh gosh, it's bad, but it really is. I mean, even in even in certain films, you would hear it referenced. It was like the people talking about the bit wars. I know for me, a Sega was always terrible compared. I didn't like the music of the Sega Genesis. Billy Madison. That's the movie I was thinking of. Remember, there's that scene where he sits down and those two kids are talking about Donkey Kong on the Super Nintendo or Mortal Kombat on the Genesis. That's what I was thinking about when I was thinking about those films as a reference to that. It's crazy, though.
Yeah.
But here's my better question for you. Like, being 8 years old, what did blast processing mean to you?
I had no idea.
No idea.
I had absolutely no idea, and their commercials did nothing to show me what blast processing was. Yeah. I mean, they could have put any term out there that they wanted to, and it wouldn't have made any bit of a difference.
Because the Super Nintendo, it was designed to handle all sorts of chips. That's why you have your Super FX series, like Star Fox and Stunt Race FX, and Doom. That's why you have them, because the Super Nintendo had it could work with several different types of chipsets.
Yeah, the chipsets.
And for people who emulate, that's also what holds emulation back. Is a lot of people who program those emulators, they can't functionally do that. But back to the wars of it, it's weird when looking at ports of today's games. Today's games, a port is literally a direct port. But back in the day, the Super Nintendo version of Aladdin, he doesn't have a scimitar.
Right.
In the Genesis version, he does.
Which, guess what? My favorite version is the Genesis version.
Genesis did certain things right. I will say this right now.
I'm not knocking Sega. I'm not knocking the Genesis at all. Yeah. At all. There was a lot of great games.
Golden Axe, Streets of Rage,
Splatterhouse, man. Splatterhouse was like a defining point for video games, because I think it was the first just downright gory in America, downright gory video game. I know there was the blood code for Mortal Kombat, but it wasn't anything kind of like Splatterhouse. I mean, you were seeing these creatures and blood flying everywhere, knives flying at you, punching them. It was just, and speaking of Splatterhouse, I mean, the port, like you were talking about the ports in the arcades, the arcade port featured a lot of differences than the Neo Geo or the TurboGrafx 16 port versus the Genesis port. They were all different.
Which is very common back in those days, because the arcade machines was the big deal. Those machines were like, if you went to an arcade and played a game, the home port was never as good, unless you count. I want to say Turtles in Time was better because it added a level to it.
I'll tell you one thing. There's a game that's on the arcade, that's on the Super Nintendo, that sucks equally as bad.
What's that?
Pit Fighter.
Oh gosh, that game.
There is nothing you can do.
Southside Jim, dude. That guy's got like his jogging pants pulled up all the way up here, and he like.
Junkyard Dog.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It sucks equally as bad on the arcade as it does the Super as it does on the.
But that's the thing with the Bit Wars ports. I mean, you never really played the same game, and it was just kind of weird during that time. You know, that's why first party mattered so much. That's why in those commercials with Sega bashing Nintendo, they have to use Sonic. They had to push, and I think compared to today, I think the Sega is close to what the Xbox 360 and the PS3 are. It was more of this is a console for the hardcore gamer.
Sure.
The Super Nintendo had like this lighter color to it that just, you know.
Yeah, it was definitely more family oriented because the Spider House, you know, obviously it's not on the Super Nintendo.
Then Mortal Kombat didn't have blood until the second game.
Right.
The first game was featured sweat.
Sure.
And you know, the magazine advertisements. I mean, that's one thing. I went back and read some, and I mean, wow, magazines really pushed the power of each. And you know, going on with the Bit Wars, stepping away from the 16-bit era, the 32-bit/64-bit era was crazy. The Jaguar. Did you want a Jaguar?
You know, I remember walking into KB Toy Store in the Huntington Mall. I don't know how old I was, but I remember walking in. It was a Halloween weekend. We'd always go to the mall on Halloween weekend. Walked into the KB Toy Store, saw the Jaguar sitting on top of the shelf. I was like, wow, this looks really cool. This looks great. And it was featured, you know, right across the box, 64-bit graphics, you know. But the price was like $5.99 or something ridiculous, even by today's standards for a console. I can't really remember what the price was, but it was jacked up to the point to where I knew I may as well not even look at it.
And the quality of the games just were terrible.
Well, it was rush. It was all rush. You know, we've got to do something to beat Nintendo. You know, basically at the time.
Nintendo was pushing the Super FX chips really hard, so I think that was probably part of it. Was Atari was really trying to jump on, you know, with these 16-bit systems. You know, the Sega had jumped up to the 32X.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good point I was about to bring up. You can see how hard Sega was trying everything they could do to meet the standards of the Super Nintendo, even though they were both 16-bit. But they had all these add-ons. They had the CD, the CDX, the 32X, with all these promises of getting better graphics and better games, but they were just bulky, too much space. It wasn't.
You couldn't plug them in.
Yeah.
You barely could plug them in. I remember seeing a full setup before. You can barely plug that stuff in. I can't imagine the 90s.
Well, my buddy of mine, he had a Sega CD when it was brand new. He got it for Christmas. I think it was $200 for the add-on, if I remember correctly.
Just the CD add-on.
Just the CD add-on was $200. He had the Genesis already. I remember going over there. He had one game, Sewer Shark. Awful, just awful. I mean, the graphics, at first I was like, wow, that looks like a real guy. And he was like, yeah, I think they actually filmed this. And they like turned it into this computer motion art.
And digitized them and stuff.
Yeah, and I was thinking, wow, this is blowing me away. But then as soon as that gameplay started, I was like, $200 for this?
Talking about the Bit Wars and relating that to it, it's just like these companies bashed each other so hard with these numbers that kids could never understand. I mean, you try going to a parent. I'm glad that all I knew to call a Super Nintendo was a Super Nintendo. I'm so glad that I did not go to my dad or my mom and saying I want it because it's got 16 bits. You know, I mean, because they understood that it was a newer Nintendo. They did not look at it like most parents apparently did, based on the stereotypes. Well, you already got a Nintendo. My parents knew it looked different. It had a different name to the product.
See, and this is where I was a little bit older at the time. You know, because I knew that Nintendo was 8-bit. And when I stepped up to the 16-bit, you know, we were going to my mom, my brother and I. He's 2 years older than me, so he was a little bit more knowledgeable and understood even a little bit more better than I did. So he's a really smart guy anyway.
Fogs up the glasses.
Absolutely. So he was just filling my head full of, oh man, look at this, you know, Super Mario World. Look how amazing this looks in the issue Nintendo Power when it was previewing it and everything. Like, look at those graphics. Look at that. Look how Mario looks so good. You can see the detail in his face. He's actually rounded shape. He's not pixelated, you know, and it was a pretty good time.
The thing is, you know, both both companies back then really pushed it. You know, it wasn't a Sega thing, it wasn't a Nintendo thing. Both companies pushed it real hard, and I think Nintendo pushed it even harder because they went on to, I mean, yeah, the Sega did the Sega 32X, but Nintendo, they named a whole console after it.
You know, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I didn't even think about that early on, but what it all boils down to, you know, is a good solid game. Whether you're playing it on a Sega, a Nintendo, a 2-bit Game Boy, a brick Game Boy.
Yeah.
It all, you know.
It's all about quality.
Quality.
It's all about
So how fun am I going to have playing this game? That's what it boils down
exactly.
to. You know, and I think that bit, you know, 16, 32, 64, 128, that kind of talk,
it's ancient history.
Yeah, it's ancient history. It kind of went away with like the GameCube, PS2. I don't even.
You don't even hear about it.
Since those days, I don't hear anything about it.
Exactly. Anymore. But hey, we're going to go ahead and go to another commercial. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Disney and Capcom and the games they made between the 80s and 90s. So, see you in a minute.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Genesis does.
16-bit arcade graphics.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis does.
16-bit sports action.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis does.
Get Joe Montana free, Pat Riley free, Buster Douglas free, Super Monaco GP free, or Collins free.
Genesis does.
What Nintendo don't. Buy a 16-bit Genesis system between now and October 31st and get an extra.
All right, and we're back here at Power Talk. Now it's time to touch on Capcom and the Disney games. Seems like they couldn't go wrong, Capcom, you know, in the late 80s or early 90s. They did a lot of good, and they did a lot of good teaming up with Disney, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. Capcom in the 80s, big company, Mega Man, and all that. You know, they're really, Strider and other games like that, they're really pushing the envelope with what a quality 8-bit game was. And the thing is, they teamed up with Disney around 1988, produced DuckTales.
That's one of many people's top, at least in the top 10 games in the NES library.
Easily.
Definitely the music. It's really famous for its music.
Yeah, the music is great. It actually was good enough to warrant a sequel years later. Thing is about DuckTales, and I'm hoping I'm right. I'm pretty sure it was 1988 was when DuckTales came out, because after that, Disney went on to produce several other games, or not Disney, but Capcom did, with other games, with Little Mermaid. They did Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, Tailspin.
Yeah.
Every game they produced pretty much was a TV show, or was about to be a TV show on the Disney lineup.
Or a movie.
Like the Aladdin game, I think was more based on the movie that came out for the Super.
Was that Capcom as well?
Yeah, Capcom did it.
Yeah,
Capcom did Goof. They did Goof Troop as well.
Oh,
that's a phenomenal Super Nintendo game.
Yeah.
The point getting to touching up on these is, you know, it's different, Disney and Capcom, than it was a lot of other companies working with, you know, popular non-game franchises. You know, you really feel like you played a quality game. I will say Little Mermaid isn't the most fantastic game, but it's definitely better than RoboCop.
Yeah, there's a lot of, crap on the Nintendo. And Capcom did, better than mediocre on probably every one of the Disney games, actually. There's not one game that you can say is just absolutely terrible. Yeah. You would find 350 games to put, below the Disney Capcom games. Easily.
Yeah.
And, of course, now DuckTales, getting its remastered in HD. And guess what? Today, they have a release date. Just announced today, the release date. PS3, PC, and Wii U is the August 3rd release date. But, the one I'm excited about, PS3. I don't even have a PS3, and I'm still excited. They're actually making a retail version of this for the PS3. And it's going to retail for $19.99. Buy it in the stores. Isn't that cool?
Wow!
What a surprise, Capcom! You keep you burn us gamers up. You keep throwing us for a loop. You take us for a spin. We think we're getting Mega Man Legends 3, or made by the fans or whatever.
The DLC you throw at us is terrible in fighting games, Street Fighter Cross Section.
But there is a smidge of redemption in there when you go and do stuff like this. I love it.
When you make a retail, like a physical product of something like DuckTales, retro fans are pretty crazy about that stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to buy the game. Anna, I will buy the game. It's only $20.
Oh, gosh.
I'm going to buy the game, but I don't even have a PS3. I just want, I want to add that to come out of my collection because it's a game that played a large part of my childhood. That's going to be into my collection now as an HD remake.
Yeah, but the thing is, Disney and Capcom pretty much worked for Nintendo, worked in the Nintendo section. When you look at the games they released, the last game they released was Disney's Hide and Seek on the GameCube. I believe was their last game. So they went all the way to the GameCube, and for a while they lost their license to do Disney games, obviously with Lion King. That was by Virgin Games.
Right.
But, the point I'm getting at is a good game company can take any franchise and make it successful. Let's just face it, LJN took a lot of franchises and just put it in the dirt.
Put them down on the ground, yeah.
And there are very few games from LJN that are worth talking about. And it's, that just goes to show you Capcom for retro fans out there. I think every retro fan out there needs to play the Disney Capcom collection because it's worth it.
Darkwing Duck. Darkwing Duck was the other one we forgot to mention.
Yeah.
And for that one specifically, that's a bit of a challenge. DuckTales and Chip and Dale, they're fun playthroughs, and you can probably do some no continue runs, maybe some no hit runs on those games. Darkwing Duck has a little bit of an edge as far as how hard the game is. It's challenging. It's a bit challenging.
And they're just not bad.
Good music, fun playthrough.
Yeah. So definitely, for all you retro fans out there, we're definitely going to touch up on the Disney Capcom series. Before we come to our next segment, I want to talk about our challenge.
Yeah, our challenge.
So what is the challenge that we're going to offer our viewers to try to complete for us?
The challenge for this week's show is going to come from Super Mario Kart. Bowser Castle 2. That's the stage that we've selected. Whoever can throw at us their fastest time completing that stage, they're going to get the most points. And comes up with the most points, you're going to get a prize. And this month's prize is a boxed game. I'm not going to tell you what. That's all you're going to get for right now. And actually, while we're touching on it, it's because we're starting late into or kind of middle of the month here. The prize will actually roll over into next month. So August, kind of July and August episodes, all those points are going to accumulate at the end of August is going to be the boxed game because it's a decent game. So we're going to let this one run through August instead of offering a prize in July and August. So that's the only thing about this challenge. The key
to submitting is if you have the ability, we'd rather see the whole video of it. And this is on time trial, by the way. This is not
time attack mode.
Time attack. Do not go to Mario Kart the GP race 150cc. Don't do that. Just do it as a time trial. And beyond that, the key is you could either take a photo of it if you can. And submit it to us on our Facebook. You can just put that picture up on our Facebook, or if you can, load it up to whatever, like PhotoBucket or something, and just tag it, put it to us and on Twitter. The key thing is we prefer video uploaded to YouTube, but if you do not have the ability, that's your alternative.
Yeah, having video is not going to give you an edge on how many points you're going to get.
Will not.
Specifically times.
More importantly, it has to be done on a Super Nintendo or a Wii U or a Wii via Virtual Console, whatever it's available on. No emulators, unfortunately.
No emulators, please.
Yeah, no emulators. We would like to be able to trust it, but I think it's a little bit too much on the honor system when we're giving away prizes the way we are.
Right.
So definitely touch up on the Super Nintendo, the Wii U, or the Wii. No other alternative. I don't think there even is an alternative beyond that.
No,
besides the emulator.
Right. Speaking of Mario Kart, our musical guest, special musical guest today. He is going to be doing the Mario Kart Love Song. I can't think of the guy who originally made the song, but he's a YouTuber. We'll put his link in the description so you can see the original song. But our buddy today, Zach Hunt, he's volunteered to come on the show, and he's going to sing his version of the Mario Kart Love Song, which is very similar to the original. But he's going to be in to do that for us, so it's a special treat.
Oh, sweet. So I guess we might as well just go ahead and get to that after this commercial.
Right after this commercial break, so stay tuned.
All right, thank you.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
The Legend of Zelda continues. Defeat your enemies, save the kingdom. Some will help you, others will betray you.
I can restore life. I can get magic.
I cannot help you. Zelda! Use your sword.
Find the crystals.
Rescue the princess.
Zelda! Zelda!
Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, only from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power.
You be my princess and I'll be your toad. Follow behind you on Rainbow Road. Protect you from red shells wherever we go, I promise. No one would touch us if we pick up a star. And if you spin out, you can ride in my car. We get together, we generate sparks in our wills and our hearts. And the finish line is just around the bend. I'll pause this game so our love will never end. Let's go again. Ooh, la-di-da-di-da, la-di-da. The blue shell is coming, so I'll go ahead. You hang behind, it'll hit me instead. Never look back, 'cause I'm down but not dead. I'll catch up to you. Don't worry about Bowser or Decay. Eat this glowing mushroom and they'll all fade away. And the finish line is just around the bend. I'll pause this game so our love will never end. Oh, the finish line is just around the bend. I'll pause this game so our love will never end. Let's go again. To the mushroom cup and the flower cup and the star cup and the reverse cup. Ooh, walu 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 wa, walu 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 waluigi.
Okay, guys, that's our show. Thanks for watching.
And be sure to remember to subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter.
Oh, and to send you off, here's another little tune from Zach.
And remember,
The power is in your hands.